Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SimCity 4 Masterclass. My name's SmileyMK93, and today in this video I'm going to talk to you about airports. This will be the first video of a series of videos, like a sub-series, because airports are big and complicated and I think it would be best if it was split into multiple parts. So in this video we're going to talk about runways and a few airport basics. First thing I want to say is about the size of airports. As you might imagine, airports are quite big, and realistically, in order to fit one in, you're going to need a large city tile. There's no beating around the bush. The only exception is if you're building a small tiny little airport that takes like Cessnas and Learjets with a 5,000 foot runway. That can probably just about fit into a medium city tile. But for anything bigger, anything that passenger jets will use anyway, you're going to need a large city tile. Reason being, a medium city tile is only 2 by 2 kilometers. That's not big enough. Large city tile gives you 4 by 4 kilometers, which is long enough to build a runway big enough to take pretty much any plane in existence. So having said that, not only, of course, I need to mention, not only do you need the space for the runway, you also need the space for the airfield. You often need parallel taxiways to the runway, space for the terminal, which is really quite big, and space for ancillary buildings like car parks, hotels, etc, etc. So, today in this video I want to talk about runways. First thing we need to do when we want to build an airport runway is to decide how long it's going to be. Generally speaking, this of course depends on what planes you want to land at your airport. Generally speaking, if you want big planes, then you need at least 8,000 feet. And to put that into perspective, that's over 1.5 miles. In the sense that most planes can land in 8,000 feet, pretty much every plane can land comfortably in 8,000 feet, or safely. Ideally, if you're building a big airport that handles regular big planes, you'll probably want about 10,000 feet or close to 2 miles. Close to 200 tiles of runway. That's quite a lot. For small planes like A380s and 737s, you'll get away with 6,000 feet. Ideally 7,000 would be good. 7,000 is more than enough. And so, yeah, that's how big you need to make your runways. So how do you make your runways that big? Well, first of all, we need to decide how long our runway is going to be. And keep this tutorial simple. I'm going to just assume the airport we're building is just a small international airport, something like London Luton or Leeds Bradford, something that handles small planes, small passenger jets, such as going up to 737s and A320s. So 7,000 feet will be enough. And to do that, 7,000 feet obviously equates to a number of tiles. The conversion factor that you'll want is to use 1 foot equals 0.01905 tiles. I'll write that down in the video once I edit it. It's 0.01905 tiles for every foot. You can plug that into your calculator, just type in 7,000 times 0.01905 and you'll get an answer, which is 133.35. Round that up, because the longer the runway is, the better. And so then we need to have a 134 tile runway. To do that, we need to mark it out. And to mark it out, I'm going to use the road tool. Each section of road costs $10. So you do the maths. Our road needs to be $1,340. There you have it. In fact, looking at that road, I'd like it to be a bit more centered. So I'm going to drag it out again. There we go. Should get all of it. One thing I need to say is that we need money for airports. Airports are very, very big and very, very expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself a bit of extra money using the moolah cheat. Type in moolah, M-O-O-L-A-H, and then just a very big number, gazillion dollars. And there you have a gazillion dollars. Be careful, moolah replaces your bank balance with what you type in. It doesn't give you an extra, suppose they're dollars. So if you type in moolah 10,000, you'll end up with $10,000 in your bank, which is not enough. Now we've marked out the runway, where it's going to go, we can proceed to actually building the runway. For this job, I'm going to use the RMIP set, like most people use to build their airports in SimCity 4. It's a very good set, very comprehensive. I'm also going to use something quite cool. I'm going to use these wide runways. I think these are Brie pizza lots. Don't quote me on that. I'll put a link in the description for you guys. To start with, we want this end piece. Yep, this is the right one. Which gives you the runway and a bit of taxiway branching off. We're going to have our taxiway and terminal to the south of the runway. So, this is important. Arrow needs to point towards the end of the runway. Once we get to halfway, it will need to point the other way. But arrows need to point towards the end of the runway. That's important. You can see there we have our threshold. We need to do a few things over here. First of which is a blast pad, which we put right next to the threshold. Again, arrow points towards the end of the runway, or towards the left. Then we need to add some lighting, some approach lighting. The first thing we need is something called an ALS, which should be 10 tiles away from the runway, or the threshold. So we mark out 10 tiles, like so. Find the ALS, which is a bit further down. As you can see, you've got quite a few lots here. That'll do. Need to zoom out so I can see it. Again, arrow needs to point towards the end of the runway. Have it level, use the grid to help you. It's 10 tiles away. And place. Another thing we need is a localizer antenna. This is something that puts out a radio beam for pilots coming into land, so they can get their landings right. Basically fires a beam that's in line with the centre of the runway, and the pilots fire the beam. What we want is the ILS localizer. This needs to go behind the runway, and it also needs to point in the opposite direction to the blast pad. This is the localizer for planes coming in from the east. It's built at the end of the runway. Place it here, like so. There you have a localizer beam. There's also a thing called a glide slope, but we'll get to that. One thing we need to build now is some sequenced flashing lights, and these should be 43 tiles away from the threshold according to my diagram. There is a diagram telling you how far you should put things. I'll put a link in the description for you guys so you can have a look at that. Sequence flashing lights. These, as always, point away from the runway. And at night that gives you a nice little branch in. Now that's complete. Turn our attention to after the threshold. Straight after the threshold, we need the runway designator, which gives you a runway number. Now, this needs to be carefully selected. Runway numbers are not chosen at random. Basically, the runway number is determined by its magnetic heading divided by 10 and then rounded up or down as appropriate. Its magnetic heading is 3 figures. from 001 up to 360 for due north. And so, this runway, as planes come in, this runway goes to the east. That's a magnetic heading of 090. So dividing that by 10, we get 09. Which means for runway coming east, we need to use this designator. In fact, let me quickly show you what we need for each orientation. If our runway comes in from the north, we need a 36 designator. From the south, a 18 designator. That's the one way round. That's the way around. And for runways going west, we need a 27 designator. You can see that there. I should point out, if you are in the United States, this runway number should be just 9, not 09. The rest of the world uses 09. There is a piece with the regular 2-tile wide runways for that, but we're going to use the 4-tile wide runways because it's more realistic. Runways are quite wide in real life. I should point out, if we have parallel runways, which happens, then we need to mark which runway is which. We do that using these RLC designators, which stands for right, left and centre. These work just as you might think. You have 36 left, 36 right, 36 centre, replace as appropriate. The L or the letter always goes before the number as you come into land. That's important. Always reads like this, 36L. It's never ever L36. That's important. So make sure you remember that. Same goes with R and C. We don't need those though, so let's move on. Now, after 9 tiles after the threshold, we need our first touchdown zone marker. This tells the pilots where they need to touch down, as you might imagine. This is the start of the touchdown zone marker. Now, this varies from country to country. If you are in the States, you need to do it a bit like this. These won't be dimensionally accurate, but it shows you the pieces you need. If you're in the States, you need something like this: 3, 2, and 1. That is US only. United States only, as far as I'm aware. Obviously check how it is in your country. But for the rest of us, we tend to just stick with these single markings here. That's what we do in the UK anyway. That's what we're going to do here. I'm going to start with this first touchdown zone marking. As you can tell, let me zoom in a bit. This piece has like a little skid marking. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, on the screen. This piece does not. The reason being, this is where planes land. So, as planes come into land, they leave skid marks as they touch down. Obviously they're not landing here, so they're not leaving skid marks. So we need a nice smooth transition between the no skid bit and the skid bit. That's where this piece comes in. You can see there, it gives us a nice smooth transition between skid and no skid. Further down the runway, we need an aim point, which should be 19 tiles from the threshold. The aim point looks like this. It's these big squares. And as you might imagine, its purpose is to tell pilots where to aim for. This is where our glide slope will be aimed at. To fill the gap, we just need some regular runway pieces, so let's just fill those in now. one thing we need at this point, because we've got the aiming point, this is where pilots aim to land, we need our glide slope. This is a radio beacon that tells pilots whether they're too high or too low as they come into land. To do that, we need two things. We need what's called a PAPI light, which goes right next to the runway. Now you can have one or two of these. Most big airports will have two. That's 4 lights. It's a series of 4 lights that tells you whether you're too high or too low. Then another thing we need, which is in the parks menu, is a glide slope antenna, which for certain approaches tells pilots how high or low they are as they come in. And that goes a bit away from the runway. As you can see, it's quite tall, so obviously planes don't want to hit it. Moving on, to complete the runway we need 3 more touchdown zone markers. And these are just like this one, the single line ones, unless you're in the States, in which case it's that 3-2-1 pattern. Let's just build those now. And we need 2 more, so let's drag out another couple of 10-tile stretches. And now we don't need these roads anymore, we can delete them. And simply fill in the gaps. Now that's the start of the runway approach. That's the nearly complete runway approach, runway start. To build the sides, we need to use the regular RMIP side pieces. Now we need to be careful here. And you'll see why in a minute. These are the side pieces, but there's 2 of them. What's the difference? I hear you cry. Let's have a look. Arrows point towards the runway. In this case, that's the A piece. And this is the B piece. Now if we go into zoom 6, you'll notice that the A piece has this little arrow or flick, and it points this way, to the right. The B piece points to the left. Now, on US runways, this flick needs to point to the centre of the runway. These don't exist on other runways, but we don't have the pieces to model that, so we're just going to use these anyway. These need to point to the centre of the runway, as I've said. So this is the wrong piece. To get it right, to make sure the arrows point towards the centre of the runway, we need to mark it out. Remember, our runway is 134 tiles long, so half of that is 67. So let's mark it out. So we know that past this point, we need to have our arrows going the other way, towards the centre of the runway. Now we know where our arrows need to go. We can just do this top side. On the bottom side, we might want to add some taxiways. We're going to do this by adding, on this side we're going to have a diagonal ramp coming off to the left. So as planes come in from the west, or from the east to the west, they come in, follow my cursor, then they go off and onto the runway. Doesn't matter where you put the taxiway, but I'm going to try and keep it roughly even. I want a taxiway at the halfway point, and there's a taxiway here. So I want to keep it roughly evenly spaced. We don't need too many taxiways. This is only a small airport. There's a bit of a my road in the way. Let's get rid of that. So it's not very evenly spaced, is it? Let's just put it somewhere around here. That'll do. Get the spacing right. We'll leave the arrow points towards the centre of the runway, as always. And there you have it. A nice taxiway exit. In fact, in the middle, I want a taxiway. I want a straight taxiway exit. So we place one here, like so, in line with the middle. And that's another reference, because I know of my side arrows. Once I get to the middle of this piece, in line with the centre line of this taxiway, I need to switch the arrows. Now we've done that, we can simply connect up with our side pieces and our straight pieces. Notice I've switched the orientation as we've gone past the halfway point. So the arrows point towards the end of the runway. Let's just fill up with our side pieces. Oops. Remember, arrows need to point the right way, so we need an A piece on this side until we get to the halfway point. And then a B piece on the other side. Okay, so that is a completed half of a runway. Now to complete the runway, you just do the same on the other side. Obviously flipped around. Start with a threshold, get your orientations correct and your spacing correct. Remember to have the opposite designator number, 09. This is 09 because it's going east, so at the end, so this runway should be 27 because it's going west. Taxiways work in the same way. Because it's a small airport, we only need a few taxiway exits, so we'll just do the same on the other side. I will do a quick cut here therefore and come back when we've completed the runway. And there you have it. Done nothing new here, just done what we did on this side. On this side, just a carbon copy, flipped 180 degrees. That's it. Now to complete the runway, all we need to do is add in some runway signs which tell the pilots how much runway is left. Just see if I can find them. Distance to go sign, there we go. These signs should be on the left as you look, as a pilot looks. There's always arrow points towards the end of the runway. Let's put them here. Work it out. 7,000 foot runway. So let's start from the end. Need to place them every every 19 tiles. So let's just mark out some 19 tile stretches of road very quickly. And do the same on the other side. Start from the end. Need one more. And we can quickly build the signs. There, don't suppose it has. Careful with the orientation. Let's point towards the end of the runway. Don't need one at the end for obvious reasons. Just do that now. Oops. And there we go. Just quickly demolish the roads now, we don't need them anymore. Come on. There we go. Do that a little bit quicker. There we go. And there we have it. Our completed runway. It can easily handle 737s and A320s. Now, one thing I do want to show you. It's quite cool. So we very quickly hook up some power. Doing this quick and dirty. And what happens? Hook up some power. Then we will turn on the night mode. And we see we have some lights. Some approach lights, and if we zoom in, we've got some runway lights. How cool is that? Fortunately, the sequence flashes don't seem to work for some reason, but yeah, got cool prototypical runway lights and taxiway lights. Don't think they still work if we zoom out. They do indeed. So yeah, we got a cool. This is my favourite thing about building airports, it's the lights. So yeah, get some cool lights. So that will do for this video. In the next part we'll talk about taxiways. Thank you very much for watching. Here's our completed runway. Get it all in one shot. I've been Smiley MK, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.